Good afternoon, and welcome to News You Can Use, a Pennsylvania Stands Up podcast about people, power, and politics. I'm your host, Pele IrgangLaden. I use he, him, and I'm the organizing director at Pennsylvania Stands Up. I am so excited for our show today. We are going to be joined in just a little bit by some candidates running for office in the Lehigh Valley that I'm really excited to talk to. But first, as you've come to expect here on the podcast, we are joined by Dr. Ashley Strange, our Director of Narrative and Communications. Ash, how you doing today?
Oh, I am peachy keen. Really tired after last week, but hey, it's a Monday. I'm here.
Really tired after last week. Yeah, Ash, you and I, we've been on a bit of a road trip of sorts. We've traveled around the state last week for our whole home repair week of action. How was that for you?
I really enjoyed it. Honestly, like having rallies is something that I haven't done a lot of this year. I feel like a lot of times a lot of the work that we do is kind of behind the scenes, and so to actually be out in the streets talking to people and like getting people really fired up about whole home repairs has it's just been really exciting.
Yeah, we've been talking about this on the podcast for a little while. The whole home repair week of action to get 300 million more dollars to fix our homes across Pennsylvania. And this past week, we Senator Nikhil Saval from Philadelphia came to our regions, right? Came to Allentown, came to Reading, came to Lancaster, and we put on these press conferences and rallies where we talked about whole home repair, how it was already helping people in our communities, and how we need even more investment from the governor and from the Pennsylvania legislature in this year's budget.
Yeah, I think that for me, really one of the most exciting things was hearing people's stories. Um, Not only that, but also being in the areas. So we were in we had driven to Lancaster, driven to Reading. I didn't have to drive far because I live in Allentown, but Pele, you had to come from Philly for all of these. But I think the most exciting thing was hearing people's stories and really how similar they are. Like literally everyone is going through it when it comes to needing home repairs. And the other exciting thing was probably seeing all of the billboards that we have in Pennsylvania, those lovely, lovely billboards, either condemning you to hell or threatening you to, get to vote for somebody. But I just all the signs everywhere. What kind of area you're in based on the flags you're seeing, some good, some bad. You feel safe, and then another mile you feel less safe. And so it's really invigorating to know that, like, tucked in between all the rows of cemeteries and cornfields, we've got people that are ready to make a difference.
You see those billboards, they're like, heaven or hell, the decision is yours. I'm like, that's kind of biased polling, right? Like I don't know who's choosing hell, but
Not only
um
that, it's a binary mindset.
yeah. My favorite part of these whole home repair events was definitely seeing the stories. I loved how local elected officials came to these events, whether they had a speaking slot or not, they wanted to be there. And got to have a lot of good food in all these places. You know, in Lancaster, we went to the Lancaster Market, the oldest indoor market in the country, and I got a soft pretzel, and the soft pretzel had a hot dog inside of it.
When
And
in Rome, when
listen,
in Rome.
that just makes me believe in a future where we all can thrive. So
100%. When I see pretzels stuffed with things or things stuffed with pretzels, I know that Pennsylvania is going to be okay.
exactly.
The other thing I wanted to talk about was there was this ruling. There was all this confusion about abortion pills, and really like the right to choice, like, and I, when people talk about like why the ruling came about in the first place, it's because there were lobbyists and people on the right who went judge shopping, and they were like, look, we can figure out how to literally remove these life-saving drugs from people by just cherry picking a judge that will vote in the way that, or that will rule in the way that we want. And that part was really, really frustrating, and it's led to like all this other debate. What role does the Supreme Court have in our healthcare decisions and all that? But the thing is that the people on the right were really looking at the systems that they had created, and they said, how do like how do we make this continue to work for us? We built it so that it works for us. Let's use it to the fullest extent of the ability that we can. And it's kind of like the Jeffs we've been talking about, right? We're giving people a break from bad Jeffs at the beginning of the podcast, but it really shows that like people with power, people with money are continuing to use the systems against us. And I really, especially with all this good news about whole home repairs, and in May, on May 1st, we're going to go to the Capitol and really push for the things that we need. I think that it really shows like what the difference of the power of the people is versus the power of paid lobbyists and people who literally built the system and are using it to tear us down, while we are using the system to help build people up.
I've heard that, like at Costco, if you go shopping for judges between the hours of 2:30 and 4, you may get access to free samples.
That's true. That's true. And as long as they're pretzels, I'm okay with it.
Yeah, let's fight for worlds where we are the ones that get to make the rules that we are playing by, not the billionaires and the corporations who are seek to destroy us. And
unless those billionaires have pretzels. I want to be really clear on that point.
Yeah, with beer cheese, Anyway, I think that's probably a good segue out of this conversation. And Dr. Strange, thank you for joining us, as always, with the hard-hitting facts and takes. You can always count on you.
Happy to do it.
All right, so we are going to move on, and I'm very excited to introduce our next guests. I've known both of these people for a while now. Met them. We were just young little organizers trying to make change when we went about 5, 6, 7 years ago, and today they are both joining us as candidates for public office. Joining us is Rodney Bushe. Rodney is running for Allentown City Council, and John Irons, who is running for Lehigh County Commissioner. Rodney and John, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for being here today.
Thanks. Thank you. It's a great honor and opportunity, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Pele. It's good to see you.
Great to see you both. Great to see you both. We're excited to talk today to get kind of the inside scoop about what it's like to be a candidate to run for office. We probably have people listening who have thought about this before, maybe are thinking about volunteering. So let's just start by hearing a little bit about your story, why you decided to run. Rodney, we'll start with you. Can you just give us the lowdown? Why are you running for city council? What led you to make this decision?
So I've been in community organizing for over 10 years, and the idea has gone around. If folks have asked me to run, it's asked if I'm going to run, and I think that right now is the perfect time for me to run, and not because of myself. That like literally, folks in my community have asked like me to run in this moment in time. We have affordable housing crisis that's happening, and it's only going to get worse. We have public safety that needs to be addressed in the city of Allentown. And I can keep on going down a list of things that need to be changed. And the folks, the community, the village wanted me to run. So I support them and they support me.
Answering the call. That is awesome. John, what about you? What led you to make this decision to run? And tell us a little about yourself.
Yeah, I moved to the Lehigh Valley about 6 or 7 years ago in 2017. And I moved from California, which, sort of liberal democratic mecca. And coming from California, where my vote meant pretty much nothing in terms of federal elections, to Pennsylvania, where I was voting in a swing county in a swing state, was a pretty big change for my own political consciousness. And so as soon as we got here, my wife and I, we got involved in a couple of local organizations. That's where I met Rodney. That's where I met Ashley. And that has just sort of taken a trajectory where the issues that we've been organizing around, we've gotten a lot of traction and support from local elected officials. And some of those officials are not running for re-election this year at the county level. And so I decided to step in and continue our work specifically around ending solitary confinement. This was a ballot initiative that had a lot of support, and I want to continue fighting for that change at the county level. So that's why I'm running. That's why I'm getting involved this year.
Awesome. Thank you. Both of you, I know both of you, in both of your stories, you were community leaders, community activists before you decided to run for office. And something that I know about both of you, and Rodney, you said it here, is that, people asked you to run. People you were called upon by your community to run for office. And I think that's usually a pretty good sign that you are the right person to be the candidate, right? We meet people who they've decided it was their destiny that they were going to run for office before they even started knocking on doors in their community or anything like that. And that is clearly not the story that is from each of you here. What is it like being a candidate? What has surprised you? What is interesting? What is hard? John, we'll start with you, and then we'll go to Rodney. What is it like being a candidate running for office?
Yeah, I think one of the surprising, maybe not surprising, but one thing that I've really noted is that even in the primary, and I'm in a contested primary, there's 7 candidates running for 4 Lehigh County Commission seats, and everyone is always sunshine and rainbows. There's not a lot of animosity in the room, and so it's really been hard to know, who you're talking to in terms of how are they supporting or feeling about you or talking about you in and out of the room. And so sort of dealing with the politics of politeness and the niceties from democratic spaces has been a little bit challenging, because I know that the reality is that there's establishment side, there's a grassroots side, there's a lot of different factions at play here. And so learning how to navigate that amongst people who I had existing relationships with has been probably the biggest challenge for me.
Yeah, people love avoiding conflict. Ronnie, what about you? What's been surprising to you?
I mean, a lot, right? So there's a space where folks have asked me to run, and I have a great community that supports me in that. But I didn't realize how many enemies I had until I actually put my name in the hat, and how treachery. I'm trying to think of the right word, of how mischievous people can be, right? So now folks that I know behind closed doors, they're saying that they don't like me, they don't support me. I had put my hat in for the appointment for Allentown City Council back in December and January, and I guess there was this whole campaign around my activism work, why people should not be supporting me. So that was very surprising. And folks, I have a great, the village supports me, but I guess there's also folks in that village that still do not want to see me win and don't want to see the change happen in our community. So yeah, that's been one of the biggest things that's kind of taken me back a little bit.
Yeah. There's nothing like vying for power that will show you who really doesn't want you to have that power.
Mm-hmm.
I want to hear a little bit more about who those enemies are, who those opponents are. But first, I want to hear what are the issues that you're putting front and center in your campaigns, and who are the people that have your back? Who is the village that is lifting you up so that you can make it over the finish line to be the next city council person or county commissioner. Rodney, we'll start with you. What issues are you putting front and center? Who are the people, the organizations that you feel like have your back in this election?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So, one of the my major things is affordable housing, restrictive zoning. We have to relook at the way we look at public safety, and look at the different models for our police department or our police force, right? Not every time somebody picks up the phone to call 911, there needs to be a police officer present or by themselves at least, right? So those are the major issues that I'm facing. And I mean, organizations, some of them are nonprofits, so I don't want to, kind of put their names out there, but like individuals like Dr. Hassan Batts, and obviously my father, Dr. Greg Edwards, Phyllis Alexander, Miss Sharon Frazier, Camilla Green, Pastor Haley. I mean, and I could keep going down the list, man. Like, I mean, obviously, clearly, Lehigh Valley Stands Up and PA Stands Up and Make the Road and Working Families Party, and not Power Interfaith. They have a C4 side to them now, but like all the organizations in the area that have been doing the work for like the past 10 years are in support of me, right? The Democratic Black Caucus, like I can keep going on and going on, like folks that really support me and get behind me and that lift me up, but also put me in a space that like, Rodney, this is what you're doing wrong. And I accept that feedback. Folks that trust me and then I trust as well. So
absolutely need those people in your campaign.
Yeah,
John, what about you? What issues are you putting front and center? Who are the people, the organizations that you feel like are lifting you up on this campaign?
Yeah, I'm the sort of main slogan of my campaign is putting people first. So I'm starting the conversation with looking at what do people need, and from my background in organizing, knocking on doors, having conversations, and listening, it's about turning those stories into a platform, into action. And so, a couple of things that are higher on those priorities is similar to Rodney would be housing. From a people-centered perspective, it's about keeping people in their homes, making sure that we have stability and comfort in homes and housing for folks and keeping them in there. So I want to limit evictions. I want to make sure that we're providing rental assistance, and I want to work with great programs like whole home repairs to ease the costs of home ownership and building for the future. I'm also interested in holding our jail and district attorney's office more accountable. Again, the sort of our neediest people who are struggling with mental health problems, with drug addiction, with homelessness, they are the ones who are most likely to be wrapped up in the criminal justice system. And I believe that's in a predatory way. And so we need to make real bold decisions to stop putting people in jail for these small, tiny offenses that should not result in their incarceration and their placement in solitary confinement and those kind of things. So I'm going to challenge that. And the last thing is that my background in education, I make a lot of calls to the county for social services, for mental health interventions, for children and youth services. And I know that those supports are very reactive, and I want to get them to a place where we're being more proactive and thinking about the future. So putting people at the center of it has really helped frame everything away from partisan talking points to what is it that we need to get done, and why is it that we need fresh decision-making perspectives at all these different levels of government. So when we talk about people and what the people need and what they tell us when we knock on their doors, that's what's gonna motivate a successful people-powered platform. And I've really enjoyed having sort of coordination with a bunch of existing elected officials. I have support from a couple of sitting commissioners. I'm running with a great slate of Allentown city councilors and a couple of other commissioners, candidates that are creating a shared vision for Lehigh County. And I think one of the ways that I'm seeing that is that when I go to the doors, when I have these conversations, we are all talking about the same issues. And regardless of where people sit politically, when we talk about warehouses, when we talk about housing, when we talk about development and criminal justice, some of that narrative work that we've been doing as organizers and as elected officials has really influenced how the public understands these issues.
I'll tell you, both of your candidacies sound really easy to support, right? And I'm hearing similar things, right? We're talking about people living in safe and secure communities, right? People having a home that they know they can stay in for a long time. People knowing that if they call for emergency services, they're going to actually get help, They're going to get the support that they need. And the thing that you just said, John, we have seen on the doors that no matter where you come from, right, no matter if you are high income, low income, if you're black or white, a lot of people want the same things, right? They want good schools, they want safe neighborhoods, they want decent housing, and so it doesn't really surprise me, but it is interesting then when like Rodney said, you see your opponents come out of the woodwork when you start running to actually make these things a reality. And want to ask you both, who are the corporations, the special interests, the party establishment? Who are the people that are your opponents, that are running against your vision? Who are the people that you're having to face in this election? And John, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think when looking at the establishment, we have both elected and unelected establishment leaders within the Democratic Party, and they're opponents in the sense not that we don't agree on certain issues, but they're opponents in the sense that they're maintaining the status quo. Right. I think when we're talking about power and trying to win and use power for people, for our communities, as soon as you get into a position of power, there's an impetus to try to maintain it, right? To try and hold on to it, and don't feel like anything's threatening you. And so I think that those interests that are trying to maintain the status quo are probably the most fundamental opponents from my perspective. Because they don't like fast change. They don't like talking about big ideas. They don't like creative solutions. If something hasn't been done before, then it has to be put off the table. And talking about it is threatening to the stability of that table. And I'm not trying to upset the table, but I think we need to have real meat on that table if we're going to actually be, making decisions and fighting for making real change that's going to deliver us the future. Outside of that, I think that developer money in the Lehigh Valley is probably the largest opponent, and it's really hard to nail down because it exists at multiple levels. It exists at like big corporate, like out-of-state corporations and corporate developer companies that are coming in and trying to purchase land, influence elected officials around zoning policies and things like that. But it also trickles down. We do have like small, landlords and mom and pop developers that sort of make this big. It's harder to sort of identify that opponent holistically. And then I think when we talk about criminal justice reform, the biggest opponents there are the folks who again want to keep everything the same, and they think that public safety is just hiding the issues of poverty and homelessness and mental health behind closed doors and behind an untransparent justice system. So if they can keep everything there, then people are going to think that they're doing a good job. The public's going to think they're doing a good job, and they're going to support them blindly. And so that overcoming that institution of police and district attorneys is definitely a large opponent in my mind.
Yeah. So we have the party establishment, real estate, the police infrastructure. Rodney, anything to add? Who are the folks we need to be keeping tabs on because they're trying to keep our vision from being realized?
Yeah, I mean, John touched on a lot, man. Like the police force system is. I mean, that personally has cost me. I mean, honestly, I that's the reason why I think I didn't get the appointments, because of the police force and my prior activism work. Also, like the powers that be that are keeping folks limited, right? So we're in a space that like Allentown has about 135 thousand people. Our voter turnout is maybe 7%, right? And this is an off a year election, right? So how do we get folks engaged, and what creative ways can we do? And every time that there seems there's some progress being made, we get hit with a roadblock. Like, why can't we engage with this community? Why can't we, so I think, yeah, I mean, John touched on a lot, but definitely the norms, man. Like, how do we, that to me, and that's to me is one of the biggest reasons why I'm running. obviously I clearly want to win. I want to be able to help push this era of change that definitely drastically needs to happen in the city of Allentown. But also, like, I want folks to know that this space is possible, and that your vote matters, and that, like, the every day-to-day things that you don't think you have a say so in, you actually do. I know one of the major issues that we're facing right now in the city of Allentown is the parking authority. And I think and where do they pull tickets at the most, and what populations are affected the most. So, but the biggest thing is to get folks engaged and not to allow voter suppression to be happening in our county.
Yeah, while low turnout in these elections is a big problem, it also can be an opportunity, right? If we mobilize our community, our bases, we can win these elections without having to get 100,000 votes, right? Thank you both for answering. I think it's important that we talk about who are the opponents of our vision, because our vision is popular. The majority of people support our vision, but there are corporations, there are wealthy individuals, establishment individuals that aren't comfortable with that change.
And I think there's narrative opponents too, which sort of like, if a narrative is out there and the public is accepting it, then you kind of like, you create these like passive opponents. And so one narrative that I'm really trying to challenge is around what is economic development, because it's almost always framed in terms of business investment, right? How is the GDP going? Where are the investments? Where are the new flashy buildings going up? And I think that a more people-centered approach to economic development looks at how are like neediest families performing, right? Are they able to, we have a really high percentage of cost burden households in the Lehigh Valley, which means that even if people are able to rent homes or afford and buy homes, they're paying way more each year from their income to have that housing than they should, right? And so that's making it less likely for them to go out and visit, go to a movie or go to the Iron Pigs game. It makes it much less likely for them to go to local business and to be able to buy food at a local farmers market, where we're trying to support small farmers, but it's going to be cheaper to go to Walmart, and pay for food that's been shipped across the country. So those really root causes of like the money in working families' pockets that's what economic development should look like. But we only frame it in terms of, do we see new development? Do we see outside interests in our area? And so that's created, I've noticed that, not really opponents, but it's a narrative that I have to counter at the doors when I talk about changing our process of approving, say warehouse development. I'm not fighting a specific opponent there, but there's a narrative that investment is good and growth is good, and we need to sort of counter what that looks like.
Right. Something our movement faces is this big narrative fight of, if people are going to cut taxes or going to give business development, we never hear about how they're going to pay for that or what program they're going to have to shut down. Versus when we want to actually invest in people in our communities, we have to show our work up front. So I think your put people first slogan really signifies your priorities. I want to ask you mentioned how programs like the whole home repairs can help with some of the affordable housing things that you're talking about, and when the movement wins whole home repairs, does these other fights where we pass legislation, how does that impact your campaign? And John, I want to start with you, because should you be elected county commissioner, you would be in charge of a program like whole home repairs. So how can the movement winning on issues support your candidacies?
It's a huge support. It's a huge boon. Not only is it something to talk about, something to actualize, and in this case, those applications are going to go out in the summer. And so in the middle of this campaign season, we're going to have people who are applying and looking for this program and seeing some of the improvements to their homes. So we're going to see, examples on the ground of what happens when we win, and how that helps families and who they look like and what those changes look like. And so that's really good, just sort of from an optics perspective. But I think it also shows that ideas that are labeled as, too wild or too new or too risky, that they can work, they can be supported broadly, and they sort of retroactively become common sense, obvious ideas. Why haven't we been doing this from the start? And so it gives a little bit of a foundation to, this is a new idea, and so was whole home repairs, right? That was a new bold ground up idea, and it's working now. It's helping families now. Our new ideas can also do the same thing. So it's a really important sort of perspective and justification of this bold vision that we have as movement candidates.
Rodney, I feel like your work in the movement is like your resume for this position that you're running for. How can movement wins? How can building power on issues support yourself, people like you running for office?
Well, for me, it's just the beautiful thing of me being an organizer and activist through all these years is I've had the opportunity to create deep and meaningful and authentic relationships with folks in the community, right? Like, this is not me. Rodney Bushe running for city council is not Rodney Bushe solely running for city council. This is about the folks that I've had conversations with, that I've listened to, that I've heard, that we've broke bread and had coffee together. We've really shared and we cried together and really spoke openly about the issues that affect us every day, right? And I'm just grateful that I have the opportunity to run with the support of the community. So, I mean, for me, it's just the deep, honest, real relationships that I've had the opportunity to have with folks.
Absolutely. So we're going to go in a couple minutes, but I did want to ask something I think is pretty unique about these races up in the Lehigh Valley. Is I know that you your campaigns, or you're part of a slate. I believe you've both have endorsed each other. Why did you decide to run together as a slate? You're running for different seats. Why should candidates support each other, run together in these types of elections? And John, we'll start with you, and then we'll go to Rodney.
Yeah, I think the hope is winning is not just to win, right? The hope is to govern. The hope is to use the power that we're fighting for to make that change. In order to do that, we need coalitions, because getting one or two elected people here and there is not enough to make real change. And so the sort of endorsement and running together as a slate builds a de facto sort of governing coalition that you can talk about, and again make your platform and your ideas more realistic and achievable, both for yourself and to communicate to voters. And the other thing it does is I think it shows that that there is agreement and disagreement, but alignment on a lot of issues, right? So if I go to a door and someone's a strong supporter of Rodney, like, we're gonna, first of all, that person and I will be talking about different things because I'm running this for a different office. But I'll have a different perspective and a complementary perspective on some of these issues. And so it shows like, oh, these people may disagree or have some differences of sort of vision on a certain issue, but they're also supporting one another. And that shows how coalition building is working, like in action. And so I think a voter having to see that and process that these three candidates who might be talking about different things are all supporting one another shows that this is a living, breathing, learning movement, and we need to work together to win.
Rodney?
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's definitely an honor. I've marched and worked alongside John several years ago, and we continue to keep a relationship. So I definitely trust and endorse him in the space that he is stepping into, and I know that when he gets into that space, that that he's the right guy for that. And he's gonna make sure he leads us all in a great direction. That's A. B. Just like what John had mentioned, and like how do we continue to work together even past the campaign, and at different levels, right? So when John's pushing all his stuff through, I can align with that, and he can align with me. So I think that's the power, and just being progressive that we are, right? Like if I get into the seat and I'm by myself, I'm alone, right? So, I'm going to get devoured, right? But if I have conversations with John and with other folks that, Lehigh Valley Stands Up has endorsed, like Cece, like that we can swing votes now, like not swing, but we could win certain policies and laws that the city needs. Like Cece's not in there by herself anymore, right? She'll have me and Natalie in there, and right, and the same support that we'll also be showing with John. So that's the beautiful thing about running on the slate.
I love that. We're not just running to win, we're running to actually transform our communities. Y'all, John and Rodney, thank you so much for joining us today. I know your election is in less than a month, so I'm sure you both are very busy, but it is such a privilege to get to hear from our Lehigh Valley Stands Up endorsed candidates who are running for office. Folks who are listening, you can find information about how to support John and Rodney's campaign in the show notes here. And Lehigh Valley Stands Up will be canvassing every Saturday in support of John and Rodney and the rest of our endorsed candidates. John and Rodney, good luck in these next few weeks, and let's go win.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Pele.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, really good conversation, and glad that we're continuing to talk about these issues more and more places.
Hell yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Please rate, subscribe, share this with your friends, with your enemies, right? We got to put our enemies on blast too. We've been talking about it. And make sure you get out there and support your local candidates running for your local elections. And if you live in the Lehigh Valley, check out John Irons, Rodney Bushe, the Lehigh Valley Stands Up slate, and let's go get them elected. Election day is May 16th. The deadline to register to vote is May 1st. So make sure you got everything in order to elect people-powered candidates this May. Until then, I've been your host, Pele IrgangLaden, and don't forget, Pennsylvania is for all of us. We'll see you in the streets.